Ebere called her favorite maid to seek her counsel on the matter, and her maid advised her to offer a more enticing offer to any man who would be willing to marry her. And Ebere offered all her wealth to any man who would take her on as his wife. Days passed, but no man came forward to marry Ebere. This was so concerning, as this proved to Ebere that her singleness was not ordinary. Once upon a time, in the heart of a very small village, lived a very rich woman named Ebere, who was beautiful but unmarried at 60. Despite all her wealth, Ebere lived a very lonely life, as no man dared to ask for her hand in marriage. Ebere even went as far as announcing that any man who would be willing to marry her would be given her largest portion of land. She hoped that enticing the men with such a huge offer would make them interested in her, but still, no man was interested in marrying Ebere. Ebere did everything possible to attract a man, but nothing she did worked, as the men kept away from her like a plague. One day, Ebere decided to pay a visit to a very powerful man to seek a solution to her problem. When she arrived at his hut, the powerful man chased her away, warning her never to step her foot in his hut again. Ebere was so confused, as she could see fear in the man's eyes. She could not wrap her head around why her life was so complicated, despite the fact that she was extremely wealthy. She returned home that evening, feeling sad and dejected. Ebere called her favorite maid to seek her counsel on the matter, and her maid advised her to offer a more enticing offer to any man who would be willing to marry her. And Ebere offered all her wealth to any man who would take her on as his wife. Days passed, but no man came forward to marry Ebere. This was so concerning, as this proved to Ebere that her singleness was not ordinary. In that moment, her wealth meant nothing to her if she had no one to share it with. Loneliness had started to eat her deep, as she watched her mates happily married with children. Some were even welcoming grandchildren, and Ebere remained single with no hope of ever finding love in her life. The young women in the village laughed and mocked her, calling her a desperate old woman who would die alone, buried in her wealth. Desperate to find love, Ebere decided to travel far away to a place where no one knew her, as she hoped to find true love there. She moved to a very beautiful village, close to the hills and mountains. She had never been to this village before and knew no one that lived there. Ebere disguised herself and lived amongst the people, hoping to find true love. Months passed, but still, no man showed an interest in her. One day, Ebere was returning home from the market when a man approached her with a smile. Ebere was so excited, as this was the first man in the village who was looking her way, talk more of smiling with her on the streets. He asked where she had been all morning, and Ebere looked at him strangely, as she wondered why he was asking her such a question. The man seemed to know who she was, but Ebere was oblivious of who he was, as she had never seen him in her life. He called her by a strange name, and Ebere in that moment knew that the man had mistaken her for someone else. All her hopes dashed, as she realized that the man smiled with her because he thought she was someone he knew. Disappointed, Ebere informed the strange man that she was not the person that he believed she was. She told him that her name was Ebere, and the man opened his mouth in shock, as he could not believe his eyes. He convinced her to follow him to his hut because his wife looked exactly like her, and Ebere, curious to see what he was talking about, followed him home. They arrived at his hut, and Ebere was confronted with the sight of a woman who looked exactly like her. How is this possible? she asked, as the other woman also stared back at her in disbelief. Ebere gently approached the woman, who looked identical to her. She introduced herself to her as Ebere and asked for her name, and the woman revealed that her name was Kelechi, the daughter of Mazi Ejiofor, the popular hunter in the village. Ebere, confused as to what was happening, asked if Mazi Ejiofor was still alive, and Kelechi revealed that he was currently alive but extremely sick. Ebere, on hearing this, requested to meet with him, and Kelechi took her to Mazi Ejiofor's hut. Immediately Mazi Ejiofor caught sight of Ebere, he began to weep, saying that he knew a day like this would come. Kelechi and Ebere looked at him in confusion as they wondered what he was talking about. It was then that he revealed to them that they were identical twins, separated at birth. He revealed that their mother gave birth to them at a time when twins were seen as an abomination and thrown into the evil forest because they were perceived as being cursed. Because of this, he pleaded with his sister in Nkechinyere to take one of the babies away to a distant land and made her promise never to reveal the truth to anyone, not even the twin, and Nkechinyere kept to her promise until she died. He knew that keeping them alive would come with its consequences, but he was willing to risk it all just to ensure that his twin daughters both lived, as he could not stand losing both of them to the cold hands of death. The twins looked at him in shock as they could not believe that they were truly sisters. Ebere then asked Mazi Ejiofor if them being alive was the reason why she never got to marry despite being extremely rich, and Mazi Ejiofor said something strange to her. He said, "What one has in abundance, the other would lack." He told the twins that so many years ago, when he noticed how poor Kelechi was, despite all the hard work she put into making it in life, he visited a powerful man who said to him that what one has in abundance, the other would lack. He looked at the powerful man in shock and asked what he meant by that, and the powerful man told him that his daughter was cursed because she was a twin who was once destined to die. However, since she escaped death, a curse was placed upon her sister and herself in a way that whatever one twin has in abundance, the other would lack, and this was the reason why his daughter Kelechi was extremely poor, because her twin sister was blessed with riches. It was then that everything began to make more sense to Ebere, who realized that her twin sister was blessed with true love, the one thing that she lacked in her life. Unsure of what to do, Ebere asked their father Mazi Ejiofor how the curse could be broken, and Mazi Ejiofor revealed that there was only one way to break the curse, and that both of them had to spend 3 nights in the evil forest, appeasing the spirits of their ancestors to win their freedom back. However, he told them that doing so was extremely risky, as they might not return home alive. Ebere and Kelechi looked at themselves, terrified, as they deliberated on if they should take such a perilous journey. After much contemplation, they realized that breaking the curse was their only chance at finding true happiness and fulfillment in their lives. With determination in their hearts, they made the decision to face the dangers of the evil forest together. Filled with terror, they clung onto each other as they navigated the evil forest. With every step they took, their hearts raced faster than a galloping horse, fearing the unknown that lay ahead. But despite their fear, Ebere and Kelechi pressed on, their bond as sisters giving them strength. They knew that they had to confront the curse that had haunted them their entire lives if they ever hoped to find peace. As the first night fell, the twins pleaded with the spirits to be merciful to them. They sat at the corner of a tree in the forest and heard the cry of a baby. Ebere and Kelechi, despite being so terrified, decided to follow the cry. as they drew strength and courage from each other, tracing the cry to the side of a tree where they caught sight of twin babies who were recently abandoned in the forest. Kelechi and Ebere, filled with compassion, picked up the babies, wrapping them in her arms and promising to protect them. In that moment, the twins realized the true meaning of their bond as twins and the responsibility that came with it. They knew that they could not abandon the babies, just as their own father had refused to abandon them. So, with newfound purpose, Ebere and Kelechi continued their journey through the evil forest, hoping to be spared by the spirits of the forest. However, their sick father, still laying on his sick bed, prayed and hoped for the return of his daughters. The thought of losing them at such a critical time in his life was so hard for him to bear, so he prayed to the spirits to take his life instead in exchange for theirs. The next night, the twins came across an old woman in the forest who pleaded for some water to drink. She looked so exhausted, and the twins wondered what she was doing in the forest alone. Despite their fear, they approached the old woman with kindness. They offered her water from their flask, and immediately the old woman finished drinking the water. She disappeared, and the twins froze in shock. A few minutes later, the twins fell into a very deep sleep and woke up several hours later to find themselves sleeping next to a tree in the village. The babies were no longer in their arms, and they wondered what could have happened. It was in that moment that they realized that the twin babies, as well as the old woman in the forest, were all spirits who led them out of the forest unharmed. "We are still alive," they screamed aloud as they rushed back home in joy to share the good news with their sick father. When they arrived at their father's hut, they met a gathering of people who revealed to them that their father died a few hours ago. Ebere and Kelechi were so devastated to hear the news as they broke down in tears. Ebere ensured that she gave their father a befitting burial, and after several weeks, she returned back to her village and met a man who fell deeply in love with her and asked for her hand in marriage. Ebere, although 60, found love and got married, whilst her sister Kelechi began to prosper in her business and soon became rich like her twin sister Ebere. That was how the twins were liberated from a curse that plagued their lives for years. They lived the remainder of their lives happy and was forever grateful to their father who preserved their lives despite all odds. The lesson to be learned from this story is that no condition in life is permanent. Do not mock a person because of their condition, because you never know what they are going through behind closed doors. Always be compassionate towards others, as the world is already full of hate. Spread love wherever you go, as this can uplift a person's spirit and give them a reason to keep living. I hope you enjoyed the story. Like, subscribe and leave a comment. It helps us grow our channel. I'll see you in our next story. Bye.